China just banned rare earth exports. 78% of America's military equipment depends on these materials. Here's what happens next. Let's just take a moment and really let that number sink in. 78%. That isn't just some statistic on a spreadsheet. No, this is a strategic chokehold. That's right. We're talking about the percentage of America's most advanced military systems, your jets, your missiles, your submarines, that absolutely depend on materials controlled by a strategic competitor. You see, this is one of the biggest vulnerabilities in modern defense, and the switch just got flipped. So, to really get why this is such a massive deal, we have to peel back the curtain and look at the hidden foundation of modern warfare, these things called rare earth elements.
Okay, so what are these things? Well, the name rare earth is actually a little misleading. These 17 metals, they're not really rare in the ground. The rare part is how incredibly difficult, complex, and frankly dirty it is to extract and refine them. And that's a process China has spent decades absolutely dominating. And for military tech, stuff that has to perform under insane conditions, it's the heavy rare earths that are completely 100% irreplaceable.
And just look at the scale we're talking about here. This isn't just a few grams in a circuit board. A single F-35 fighter jet needs more than 900 pounds of this stuff. A Virginia-class submarine, we're talking over 4 tons. These elements are basically the muscles and nerves of modern military power. They make everything possible, from the pinpoint accuracy of a guided missile to the incredibly powerful magnets inside a jet engine.
Which, of course, brings us to the main event, the moment China decided to turn its dominance of the supply chain into a weapon.
Yeah, this was no accident. I mean, just look at the timeline. In October of 2024, the US puts more restrictions on China's access to high-end computer chips. And then just a few weeks later, boom, December 3rd, Beijing fires back. This was a clear, calculated shot across the bow in what's becoming a new kind of technological Cold War.
And let's be clear, China isn't even trying to hide its intentions. This quote from their own Ministry of Commerce says it all. The goal is to stop these materials from getting to organizations for military and other sensitive uses. I mean, you can't get more direct than that. They are aiming this straight at the US defense industry. So how did we get here? This chart really tells the story. For decades, the West was all about chasing lower costs. We outsourced all the difficult, messy, complex work. We traded our own industrial strength for convenience, for cheaper goods. And this is the result. A deep, strategic vulnerability where almost 3/4 of all the rare earths America imports come directly from China. So, as you can imagine, this has set off a frantic scramble in the US. It's a race against time, really. A massive effort to try and rebuild an entire industrial capability that was basically left to die. And the Pentagon's answer has been to draw a hard line in the sand. Look at this. By January 1st, 2027, defense contractors are supposed to be completely prohibited from using rare earths from China. That is an incredibly ambitious goal. Some people would even call it desperate.
And they are backing it up with serious cash. We're talking over $500 million that the Department of Defense has poured into this since 2020, all to rebuild a domestic supply chain. To put that in perspective, this is one of the biggest peacetime industrial mobilization efforts in recent American history.
So the strategy really boils down to 2 main plays. First, on the home front, you've got MP Materials. They're running America's only operational rare earth mine out in California. The catch? They mostly produce the light stuff. For the really critical heavy rare earths, the US is looking to its friends, mainly Australia's Lynas. And the Pentagon? It's all in on both, funding processing plants in Texas to try and bring that crucial refining skill back to American soil. But here's the thing. Even with all this money and this incredible sense of urgency, the road ahead is, well, it's anything but clear. Experts are telling us to buckle up for a decade, maybe more, of uncertainty and struggle.
Yeah, the consensus from people who actually work in this industry is pretty sobering. You see, building a complete supply chain, from the mine all the way to the final magnet, it's not just about digging rocks out of the ground. It's about mastering that ridiculously complex refining process that China has perfected over decades. So the expert view? Real independence is going to take 7 to 10 years, which makes that 2027 deadline look, well, let's just say it's nearly impossible to hit without some major loopholes. So what happens next? Let's look at a few possibilities. Okay, best case scenario. Let's call this the survival option. The massive government investment pays off big time. Allied supply chains ramp up faster than anyone thought possible, new recycling tech comes online, and the US gets to a place of near independence by 2030. It's the future where innovation basically outruns the geopolitical drama.
But then there's the worst-case scenario, and it's pretty grim. The technical hurdles are just too big to overcome quickly. China sees the West struggling and decides to tighten the screws even more, maybe expanding its export bans. The result? You start seeing major delays in producing our most critical weapon systems. Our military readiness is compromised, and we're stuck in this dangerous state of dependence for another decade or more.
But the most likely outcome is probably somewhere in the middle, a long, expensive, grinding struggle. The 2027 deadline comes and goes, and it's only partially met. This forces the Pentagon to hand out a ton of waivers just to keep production lines from shutting down. By 2030, our dependence on China is definitely reduced, but it's not gone. And China, having seen just how powerful this economic weapon is, decides to keep it in its back pocket as a permanent tool of statecraft.
This quote from a defense industry insider really just says it all, doesn't it? No minerals, no missiles. It's that simple, that stark. And for the foreseeable future, where we get those minerals is going to remain a critical vulnerability.
And that leaves us with one final big question. For most of history, geopolitical power came from what you could dig out of the ground, right? But this whole crisis, it points to a brand new reality. In the tangled, global supply chains of the 21st century, maybe the ultimate power doesn't belong to the nation that owns the mine, but to the one that has mastered the refinery.